Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And are you tired of getting zugged down by melee in WoW PvP? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going over how I personally deal with it on the Disciplined Priest. This is one of the most stressful situations to deal with when you are just relentlessly and endlessly being tunneled down by Death Knights and Warriors and all of those kinds of varieties of melee DPS specializations. I'm going to be talking about what I'm personally doing as Venthyr. I'm running Draven. This allows you to have Service in Stone, which is extra damage reduction when you're low health. This paired up with Masochism gives you a lot of extra damage protection with Focused Will passively already applied. This combination is going to make you way more durable. I do run the instant cast Radiance in this build, and on my Draven tree, I have the conduit to increase the healing from my Radiance. And this is very important for surviving a build like this. You want to save your Radiances as the last possible resort, as it is a very expensive heal. You also want to monitor things like Sharpened Blade from a Arms Warrior, which is going to reduce the healing you do by 50%. If you Radiance into that, you are not going to have an easy time recovering. And then not only just talking about what I'm personally doing, but what your team should be doing as well. In this particular matchup, I'm playing with an Enhancement Shaman and an Arms Warrior, so both melee DPS. If we stand next to a Death Knight, we are going to get AoE down, area of effect damage down. It's going to be a triple kill for this team. Against the Frost Death Knight, you need to split up. You need to stand away from the Death Knight and create some distance. That can be particularly difficult on a map like the one that I'm playing on, which is going to be Blackrock Hold because it's so small. So right off the bat, you want to obviously Power Word Shield all three members of your team. This will give you Atonement to all three members and allow you to heal them while dealing damage. Now, while the pressure is low, you want to work on getting your Purge the Wicked up, and you want to be getting Power Word Solace on cooldown. But you can see this team is already kind of running at me, looking like they want to smack me, and here they Death Grip me into the fight. I see that the Death Knight is stunned, and after that, I use Psychic Scream. So anytime you get Death Gripped, using Psychic Scream as sort of a counter to that is a great idea. Abomination's Limb lines up perfectly with Power Word Barrier and Rapture, so I like using my Power Word Barrier and then my Rapture to heal, so I don't need to be dealing with being interrupted as well as gripped around in circles. This way, if you get gripped out of your barrier, you'll still have the reliance of those Power Word shields, and this is where now I'm going to need to cast, and you need to not be afraid of casting because this team in particular has a lot of interrupts. So as soon as I've casted Penance and I'm kicked, I'm going to start spamming Shadowmend. This is going to allow me to get Masochism up, and as soon as we start to recover, I want to try and focus on getting my Power Word Solace on cooldown as soon as possible because I'm going to be spending a tremendous amount of mana in this fight. If I cast Shadowmend first, then I can obviously use Penance when I'm kicked, and I can also rely on Pain Suppression. So in this situation, Pain Suppression is my next most powerful cooldown. So getting kicked on Holy is going to be very dangerous, so I may opt to just cast Shadow and tank interrupts with Shadow so that I can always have Pain Suppression as a backup. I do recommend playing with hybrids like Enhancement Shamans and Rep Paladins if you're a healer, as they're going to help you out. Now I get put into a Stormbolt, and this Shaman is running an Earth Elemental Legendary, which we can see here with these red lines. That Elemental does an insane amount of damage, and that's actually why I used Pain Suppression here. It wasn't because of the Warrior of the Death Knight cooldowns. It was because of that Rock Elemental with Earthquake. You really need to respect that. It's something low-key that you might not even notice a lot of the time, and most often it's Restoration Shamans that will be running it to add an extra burst damage. There I landed a Psychic Scream onto both DPS, and you do want to be trying to use that on cooldown. It's very important to do that against a Warrior so that their Berserker Rage does not remove every single Psychic Scream that you land on them. If you're playing with a class that has a fear that can soak that Berserker Rage, always pay attention to it. Putting the Warrior and the Death Knight into a full fear is a good way to relieve the pressure. Now in this position, both DPS are feared, and I can see that the Shaman is very low health, so I need to snipe the Grounding Totem and try and stomp some totems for my team, as all of our teammates are basically at full HP, so I'm playing a little bit more aggressively. But now that the Shaman has survived, I've got to get ready to get tunneled down again, so I'm going to fake out some interrupts, get my Powered Solace on cooldown as soon as possible, and then just start spamming Shadowmend almost preemptively. And you can see I'm running instant cast Radiance, but I haven't even used one yet, and it's very important that you don't want to rely on it as a crutch You only want to use it in a last resort situation, and pay attention to the Sharpened Blade, which is active right now on my debuffs. Now that Sharpened Blade is over, my entire team is stacked up and we're getting AoE'd. This is the danger of standing too close to the Death Knight, and as a result, I use Radiance to recover my whole team from that pressure as the last resort. I go for Penance, I get kicked, then I go for Shadowlands, and I don't really care too much if I get interrupted again. I'm just going to be spamming it out. I get very low in this position. My warrior stays back with me to try and assist. I also utilize Psychic Scream. Both DPS members trinketed that, and things can get scary. But because I'm running Draven, because I've got Service in Stone, that particular Soulbind Conduit, I survived there. If I didn't have the Draven Soulbind Conduit, I would not have survived in that position. Now that we're back and we're alive, I'm penancing aggressive on the Shaman. He's in my line of sight. I kind of want to more or less just scare the Shaman away from me, because the Shaman can make it very difficult to recover with Wind Share. So because they've gotten off of me, they're scared and they're protecting their Shaman. They think that they can win on mana. They end up stacking up and they actually end up getting cleaved. And you can see how dangerous that is. It's almost kind of a game of chicken where one team is trying to kind of tunnel the healer, and then the other team is forced to also tunnel the healer, because if they don't, they're going to stack up and they're going to get just monster balled down very quickly. So if you've been healing and you've been having a tough time with compositions like this, and it's because your melee DPS are attacking the people attacking you, it makes sense, right? Like, hey, attack them, get them off of me, and things will work out. That's not really how it often works. It actually backfires a lot of the time. You've got to kind of almost like reverse psychology when you're put in those types of situations. And I think if I've got another game here, we could watch it again, a similar strategy, but with a druid in particular, just to really kind of nail it in. Because I think it's an important topic to go over. Here's a different version with a druid rather than a restoration shaman. And when we jump into this one, we'll get a little bit closer into it. Actually, don't want to be too far out. This team, it goes for a bit of a split DPS strategy where the warrior is attacking me at the start. If it's just the warrior, it's just one member that can't heal, you want to drag them far away and just attack them. This is going to get them low health. This is going to make them a bit scared. It's going to either make their druid have to overextend to you to heal them, or make the target that's hitting you run away. I use pain suppression here because of Colossus Smash, which is this icon right here. It's a very scary cooldown from the Arms Warrior, and I didn't really want to fall behind. And that's going to be where the warrior's damage pivots most of the time. Now I can see Abomination Limb from the Death Knight. It's that green swirly hand icon that's just wrapping around the Death Knight. That is the scariest moment for a Frost Death Knight right now in Shadowlands. So when you see those green slappy hands and you see that Colossus Smash icon, you know that you need to consider using cooldowns. So I like using my Rapture. My team was moving around too much, so I didn't use a Power Word Barrier like I used in that last game. It also wasn't really too dangerous because it wasn't like they were attacking me. This team isn't really tunneling me either. This team's main plan is to try and win on mana. So if they attack me and leave their druid open, they're a bit more worried about that, and they don't have I don't have a Frost Death Knight on my team to really counter them just attacking my DPS. So it's going to work out a little bit better for them. But because I'm not the target, this means that I need to focus more on atonement healing, which means I need to heal by doing damage. This will be utilizing Mind Games, Solace, Smite, and Penance aggressively on targets. This is going to be a more mana efficient way to heal, and this is what you want to be able to switch between whenever you're being tunneled versus when you're free and able to just cast damage, as I am in this game. Now I'm pushing forward. I was thinking about going for a Psychic Scream, but getting too close to the Warrior and the Death Knight is making me a bit squeamish. I don't really want to kind of show them that I'm there, because they might be go, ooh, look at this priest standing right here, and it can be tough to reposition. So you do want to kind of keep your distance while you're going about this. I utilize a little bit of a mind control here just so my shaman and my warrior can get a bit more aggressive. We were really having a tough time with Death Knight and warrior throughout this evening, so I thought it was important to look at what was going right, what was going wrong, share with you the information as well so that you can take it for your own gameplay and start seeing some improvements. But the number one thing is the cooldown exchange. Here you can see the Death Knight death grip me. My first response is to just Psychic Scream. I think that's a good guttural response to prevent them from getting further crowd control and getting further damage, and it kind of punishes them for pulling you in, right? You can just be like, get off of me. You're like a puffer fish, and you expand as soon as the Death Knight pulls you in, and then they don't like it too much. Here, they're going back to that split DPS strategy, and that is, again, because this team is trying to win on mana. So they have the warrior attacking me and the Death Knight attacking my warrior and cleaving my shaman. That's going to maximize their damage per second. This can be a really nasty strategy in particular. popular for a Discipline Priest to deal with. So we need to do our best to heal through with Atonement and getting Powered Solace, this little yellow icon at the bottom. We want that on cooldown as much as possible. That's where our actions per minute, kind of a term from StarCraft, comes into. We need to make sure that we're hitting that every single time, almost like a larva inject on Zerg, if we want to maximize our mana retention. And so far, I feel like we've been doing a decent job because our mana is relatively even to the Druids at this point. And I'm just poking out with mind games, trying to keep my Purge the Wickets up, getting my penances out as well on cooldown and my solaces to make sure that I'm maximizing my efficiency. They've gone back to a split DPS strategy where their Death Knight's attacking my Warrior Shaman, the Warrior's attacking me. So it's just mostly don't panic when this happens. Realize that, hey, it's only one player hitting me. It's not two. You don't want to overreact and use stuff that you don't need to use. You want to make sure that you're trading for cooldowns. So in this position, I get pummeled. That then means I can use Shadow Mend. This is going to allow me to activate Masochism, give me a lot of damage reduction. And then I use Psychic Scream during Colossus Smash. And I decide to use my Medallion. You can see this yellow icon. I really respect this. So I use Medallion to break the stun, and I use a barrier to protect myself from the warrior as they've activated their avatar seen here on the health bar. And that immediately makes the warrior have to swap off of me rather than continue attacking into my damage reduction. And that's what I'm paying attention to, number one, against any warrior team. And then as soon as I've got distance again, I'm using my Solace. I'm getting Atonement up, but here I get gripped in. I use Penance because you can use it while you're flying through the air. So you don't need to worry about getting interrupted. But because I use my barrier, I don't have a good answer right now for those green hands coming out from the Death Knight other than my Rapture. I made sure to at least sit back on that, and this will allow me to just use Powered Shield while I'm getting gripped around and not really able to cast or do too much, and assist my team without having to worry about being interrupted. And that's why it's also good to use powerful defensive cooldowns during offensive cooldowns, is to alleviate some of the pressure from needing to cast. And then when I have distance, I need to start focusing on healing up my teammates. I actually use my Life Grip on my warrior while he's disarmed, as he's kind of defenseless right now with no Die by the Sword at low health, and I don't want to really expend a lot of mana. So instead, I use Life Grip to reposition my warrior away from the fight. And still, our main strategy is to try and connect to the Druid as much as possible. But this is an incredibly tough matchup. Whenever they're split like this, you can see the warrior coming after me right now. I do want to do my best to soften up the warrior with Purge the Wicked and as much damage as I can. I utilize a Psychic Scream here. I was more or less guessing if they had Berserker Rage available, but it's a good idea anyways to Psychic Scream as much as possible just for mana retention. I use a defensive penance on my warrior here. Usually my rule of thumb is if a target is below 60% health, I will use the penance to heal rather than to do damage. If the target is above 60% health, I'll use it to do damage. And that's been my sort of just fail safe. Here we can see Colossus Smash. This is the scary cooldown from the warrior. So I'm just mashing out Shadow Mends, making sure Masochism is up. I actually use Power Infusion during this to go for a fast cast penance. And I'm just mashing out Smites to try and heal my warrior who is downstairs. And that's another bonus of the Atonement, is that you can heal through line of sight. You can see my warrior, he's actually down below the bridge. But because I'm attacking the warrior with Atonement up, I can actually heal the warrior. A lot of times you may panic and start running the way that I am now because their team is swapped completely off before you even needed to, when you can heal your partner with Atonement through the pillar. So you want to be aware of that. Now things are getting really stressful because I have fallen behind on mana, but with the entire team downstairs, hey, this is a pretty good opportunity to just try and sit down for a drink. There's nobody up here that can hit me. Unfortunately, the combat, for whatever reason, took forever. It doesn't really matter, though. You want to at least be baiting that you can drink so that the enemy team needs to reposition. So don't think of it as like, well, I can't drink because I'll never get it. You still want to just try to, so that the other team has to play around you trying to. If you don't, then they're just going to continue smashing as much damage as possible. So it is very important to focus on doing as much, drinking as much as possible. You could have tried to drink a little bit more often before this point, but it seemed really obvious because the warrior had swapped off me. Now in this position, the warrior has no medallion, so they could be an excellent target to swap to. They can't use their defensive cooldowns when they're caught in a stun, and their druid just jumped downstairs out of line of sight. So swapping over to the warrior in this position could be a great idea. However, it does stack up my team on top of me, and against the Frost Death Knight, that can be very scary. So I decided to use my barrier here, and you will note that this is completely outside of the normal window, right? There's no Colossus Smash activated. There's no green hands from the Death Knight activated. But because my mana was getting so low and the game had been going on for some time, I felt pressured to use my barrier. I don't use anything else, though. I've still got a Rapture. I've still got a Pain Suppression to start thinking about using in the future. and now I see that the Colossus Smash and their avatar has been popped. I could activate my Shadow Fiend. I could go for a Pain Suppression. The Warrior's Blade Storming on me with Sharpened Blade. You don't want to use your Radiance charges into that. Definitely pay attention to it. It's this Mortal Strike icon at the top whenever that's on you. But you can see, because I didn't use a cooldown right away, the Warrior actually hacked me down to like 50% health. So it was a very scary moment to try and deal with, because I didn't use a cooldown really fast enough. But now I'm using a penance aggressively. Everyone's above 60% health, and I have Atonement active on all members to allow me to cleave heal the team. We swap to the Warrior. We get died with the sword. So going after the Druid until the Druid runs too far away, and then swapping back to the Warrior when they've overextended, trying to retreat from the damage, was a strategy that started working well for us overall. You can see that my mana is actually starting to even out with the Druid in this position, and it started punishing their split. But this is now those green hands coming out of the Death Knight. This is a scary amount of damage. I want to reposition away from the Death Knight. I don't want to get death gripped during this time. Fortunately, the Warrior didn't have any damage, and I was able to get a Psychic Scream. So despite those green slappy hands being active, we were able to stabilize quite effectively without needing to use too much. I grip my Warrior away from the Death Knight here. It's Pillar of Frost from the Death Knight. I don't really want him to be able to connect. I don't have the mana to heal. So using Life Grip to reposition away from the melee DPS to just completely avoid taking damage that now you no longer need to heal is also a good idea. And I'm mashing Solace whenever I come out of this stun, because this is where it really matters that I get Solace as much as possible. Death Knight's upstairs, out of line of sight of the Druid, so I'm going to drop a Mind Games. This prevents the Death Knight from using Death Strike. My Warrior swaps back for a moment to their Death Knight to try and apply pressure while their Druid is downstairs dealing with my Enhancement Shaman, and we're able to get quite a bit of a pressure, as is this split DPS strategy. Now you can see the Druid's still slightly ahead of me at this point on mana. I'm telling my teammates the Druid's casting Clone on me to help me, so they use interrupts. But now Colossus Smash is active, this yellow icon, so I use Psychic Scream. This stops the Death Knight from doing damage. So I don't really need to use a cooldown. It's either crowd control or cooldown. Whenever you see an enemy player's cooldowns, you would have to immediately respond, because now you can see the Warrior wasn't crowd controlled and almost killed my Warrior despite the Death Knight even being crowd controlled. So you just need to always be aware. And we're still just trying to go after their Druid, waiting for them to see if they overextend. And I use Pain Suppression during this time because I saw the Chill Streak, the Snowball Bounce, and my teammates are stacked up trying to go for the kill. So I drop a Pain Suppression, and then I try and slip away and drink. This allows my partner to take reduced damage while I reposition to sit down for a drink. So you can use defensive cooldowns like this as well when the game has been going on for some time and you know you're going to lose on mana. Because I was able to get that drink, I'm now even with the Druid on mana, and it also made them position differently, where they had to come forward to try and stop me. Otherwise, they would have been able to just continue doing what they were doing. I was going to run out of mana, and I was going to run out of steam. Once again, this Warrior, I've softened him up just by hitting him with my damage over time, and he could be a good swap target. I drop a barrier here, and this is really just a premature barrier. There's no offensive cooldowns. This is kind of like last resort, where I want to make my team super durable, and I want to try and go for the kill. I wouldn't do this when I was higher mana, but as a result, we were able to burst down the Warrior, and it allowed me to stay aggressive. The other team was also maybe also kind of baited a little bit, where they see me drop a barrier, and then they're thinking, oh, we're about to win the game. He doesn't have barrier anymore. Just wait. We're going to kill him after this. But that's kind of last resort. I'm not, I don't normally throw up my cooldowns like that willy-nilly or aggressively unless it's a complete last resort. But as a result in this match, we were able to win. This one wasn't so much being tunneled down in the second one as the first one, but it's a good example of how those situations can change in a game to game, or within a single game itself. So you want to be aware of every single mode that you're in, whether or not it's being tunneled down, and you're focused on last resort radiances, you're focused on cooldowns for cooldowns, you're focused on just casting as much as possible and maintaining masochism with Shadowland on yourself, and then you're going to be able to survive. If you'd like to watch these games live, you can watch them on twitch.tv/Supatease. I have been also gearing up to play Resto Druid, so I'm going to be expanding the healer repertoire a little bit here on Twitch and YouTube as well. So if you're interested in that, then definitely check it out. But other than that, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.